I never imagined the day I filed for divorce would be the day my entire world collapsed. I remember standing outside the courthouse, my fingers trembling around the crisp papers. 26 years of marriage reduced to a stapled stack that felt both freeing and terrifying. I told myself Emily, my sweet, warm-hearted daughter, would understand. She'd seen the silent dinners, the cold stares, the constant dismissals. She knew how small Mark had made me feel. But when I pulled into our driveway, something felt wrong. The curtains twitched, shadows moved inside, and when I tried my key, it didn't fit. The lock had been changed. Before I could process the sting of that, the door opened, and there she was, my daughter, my Emily. But her eyes, they were colder than I'd ever seen. "Mom," she said, crossing her arms, her voice flat. "Dad told us everything." "Us?" Mark's mother and father appeared behind her, standing in my foyer like royalty, surveying a servant. Emily continued, "They think you need help. They said you've been unstable. And honestly, after everything you've done, I agree." The words hit me harder than any slap could have. I tried to breathe, tried to explain, but she stepped back as if I were contagious. "The lawyer said it's better if you stay somewhere else for now," she added. "For everyone's safety. My safety. Everyone's safety." I stared at the home I'd built, the daughter I'd raised, and realized I had just lost both in one brutal moment. I walked away with a single suitcase and a heart that felt scraped raw. And as the door slammed behind me, something inside me quietly ignited. Not rage, not revenge, a promise. This wasn't the end. Not for me. I didn't get far before the weight of everything hit me. My suitcase felt heavier with every step, like it was dragging 26 years of sacrifice behind me. But I forced myself to turn back once, just once, because I needed to see if Emily would follow. She didn't. Instead, Mark's mother stepped into the doorway, waving at me with the slow, superior smile she reserved for waitresses and people she believed were beneath her. "Do take care of yourself, Laura," she called out. "Stress isn't good for a woman your age." A woman my age, as if I were a fragile antique they'd just removed from the house. Then Mark appeared behind them, strolling through my living room with a glass of wine in hand, acting like the king returning to his castle. His father clapped him on the back, whispering something that made them both laugh. Laugh. At me. Emily was the last to reappear. She spoke without meeting my eyes, clutching her phone like a shield. "Mom, it's just temporary. They said you need space to calm down." Calm down. I had never raised my voice. Not once. Not during the silent treatments, the nights Mark wouldn't come home, the birthdays he forgot. I had swallowed every bruise to my dignity, but suddenly, I was the dangerous one. When I tried to step forward, Emily lifted her hand, stopping me, as if I were a stranger. "Mom, please don't make this harder." Harder? Harder than being erased? I nodded slowly. If she chose them, then she chose them. There was nothing left to fight for. Not today. With my heart splintering in my chest, I turned and walked away. The Donovans believed they'd humiliated me into silence. But humiliation doesn't kill a woman like me. It awakens her. The night I left, I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not because I wanted to scare them. No. They weren't thinking about me at all. I disappeared because it was the first time in 26 years that I finally could. I turned off my phone, tucked it into the bottom of my suitcase, and boarded the first bus out of town. No plan, no destination, just distance. Distance from the house that no longer felt like mine, and from the daughter who no longer looked at me with love. By morning, the Donovans were already crafting their own version of my absence. "She finally snapped," Mark told neighbors. "She ran off because she couldn't handle the truth," his mother added. "We did everything we could for her." Emily posted online, the words stiff and eerily rehearsed. They built a perfect story, a neat little narrative where they were the heroes, and I was the troubled wife who had abandoned her family. And the town believed it. Why wouldn't they? Mark had spent years paving that road. But while they congratulated themselves for, quote, surviving the chaos, I was being offered a place to stay by the one person Mark had always tried to keep out of my life. Daniel, an old friend I hadn't seen in years. He didn't ask questions. He didn't judge the broken pieces of me that spilled out the moment I walked through his door. He simply handed me a warm blanket and said, "You're safe now, Lara. Rest." For the first time in a long time I did, and when I woke up, something inside me had shifted. The pain was still there, but it wasn't hollow anymore. It was sharpening, forming purpose, forming clarity. The Donovans thought my disappearance was weakness, but it was preparation, the calm before the storm they never saw coming. Daniel's guest room became my sanctuary, quiet, sunlit, and untouched by the Donovans' judgmental whispers. But peace didn't sit comfortably with me. My mind replayed every moment of the last few years, and something kept scratching at me from the inside. Mark didn't just neglect me. He prepared to erase me. I started digging, carefully, quietly. It began with a simple thought. What paperwork had he controlled? What accounts had he insisted on managing for my own good? The answers came faster than expected. Daniel helped me access my credit reports, and within minutes, my heart dropped. There it was, a bank account under my name, one I had never opened. Worse, it had months of withdrawals, thousands of dollars gone. "What is this?" I whispered, even though I already knew. Mark had been moving money, our money, using my identity, and that was only the beginning. Buried in old email folders I never used, Daniel found digital statements, credit lines I never applied for, fees I never approved, a pattern that stretched back years, a quiet siphoning, a slow financial suffocation. "He wanted you dependent," Daniel said, voice low and steady. "This wasn't neglect, Lara. This was strategy." My stomach twisted. Every missing receipt, every misunderstanding, every time he told me I was forgetful or confused. This wasn't incompetence or marital drift. This was intentional. As the evidence grew, my heartbreak solidified into something colder, sharper. I wasn't the unstable wife they painted me as. I was the target of a man who had been setting up his escape and my downfall, long before I ever filed those divorce papers. And now that I could finally see the truth clearly, one thing became certain. Mark Donovan had no idea what he'd just awakened in me. The financial lies were devastating. But what came next carved an even deeper wound. One night, while searching through old files stored on a cloud account Mark thought I'd forgotten, Daniel found something labeled Lara Documentation. At first, we assumed it was financial. Instead, it was far worse. Inside the folder were scans of therapy notes. Except they weren't mine. The handwriting was messy and frantic. Words like paranoid, emotionally unstable, delusional episodes circled in red, as if someone was preparing evidence for a case against me. I stared at the notes, my breath hitching. "These aren't real," I whispered. "I've never said any of this." Daniel leaned closer. "Look at the timestamps. These were written months before you even considered divorce." Which meant Mark had been building the narrative years in advance, slipping comments to Emily like poison. "Your mother forgets things. She gets confused. She needs help." And Emily, my bright, loving daughter, slowly absorbed every planted doubt. Memory after memory replayed in my mind. Emily frowning when I misplaced keys, Googling signs of early dementia when I cried after a fight with Mark, telling her grandmother, "Mom's been acting strange lately." All of it orchestrated. Mark hadn't just manipulated me, he'd rewritten me in my own daughter's mind. My throat tightened as an old realization resurfaced. The distance Emily had kept, the coldness, the dismissive tone. She wasn't naturally drifting away. She had been pushed. "Lara," Daniel said softly, "he wasn't trying to leave you, he was trying to destroy your credibility." I closed my eyes. This wasn't just betrayal. This was character assassination. And Mark Donovan had almost succeeded. Almost. But the woman he tried to erase had just started fighting back. I never expected a single piece of paper to change everything. But the day Daniel handed me the worn, yellowed envelope, my fingers trembled like they had the first time I held my divorce papers. "Your father-in-law left this decades ago," he said cautiously. "It's been hidden in his lawyer's office. I thought you should see it." I unfolded the document, eyes scanning the faded handwriting. My name stared back at me. Lara Donovan, sole beneficiary of the Donovan estate. Not Mark. Me. Every property, every investment, every family asset he and his parents flaunted as theirs, all meant for me. For a moment, I felt dizzy. My heart pounded with disbelief and something darker. Anticipation. Every injustice, every stolen penny, every humiliation I had endured suddenly had context. Mark hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, he'd stolen a legacy that was mine by law, by love, by right. Why hide this?" I whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Because if this came out, it would destroy everything they've built. And Mark knew it. That's why they locked you out, made Emily doubt you, kept you away from your own inheritance." Anger surged through me, bitter and hot. I could almost hear Mark laughing in my mind, thinking he'd won, but he had no idea that a quiet storm was forming. Every calculated step he'd taken to erase me, to rewrite history, was about to unravel. I tucked the will into my bag, careful not to tear the fragile paper. The power it represented pulsed in my veins, mingling with the heartbreak and betrayal. Mark and his family believed they had erased me. They didn't know I wasn't just a wounded woman anymore. I was a force, and I had the law, the truth, and the patience to dismantle them, piece by piece. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I had prepared for Mark, for his parents, for the world, but never for her. My Emily, my daughter, my heart. Daniel slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, emails, and a small official document I could barely believe. The proof was undeniable. Emily had been bribed. A down payment on a house, transfers labeled as "help for Emily," all meant to sway her to side with Mark and his family during the divorce. I stared, unable to speak. My own child, my child had been bought. Not with threats, not with manipulation alone, with cold, calculated money. She had been told, quietly and carefully, "Your mother isn't stable. Take this and everything will be fine. Help us remove her." I felt my chest tighten. Every memory of Emily's distant glances, her sharp words, her refusals to defend me, every one of them suddenly had a clear, horrifying reason. My daughter hadn't just abandoned me, she had been engineered to betray me. A tear slipped down my cheek, but I didn't wipe it. I let it fall. Let it fuel me. I whispered through clenched teeth, "So this is how far they'd go." Daniel reached over, steadying my hand. "It's devastating, but now you know. And knowledge is power." Power. The word echoed in my head. I realized then that my heartbreak could be weaponized. The betrayal that cut deepest, the one I thought would destroy me, was now the spark. It would guide every move, every plan, every step of the revenge I had been silently constructing. Emily thought she had taken everything from me. But the truth was, she had just handed me the fire I needed to rise. Months had passed since I vanished. Months in which I rebuilt myself, not just emotionally, but strategically. I wasn't the frightened, locked-out woman who had left a suitcase on the porch. I was sharper, calmer, and more deliberate than ever. The day I returned, the Donovans were unaware of the storm about to hit them. Mark's smug confidence, Emily's forced bravado, his parents' haughty dominance. They all assumed I had disappeared because I was broken. They thought I was defeated. I stepped into my old life with a measured grace, each movement calculated. My heels clicked softly against the familiar hardwood, my eyes scanning the room as if I'd never left. The tension in the air was palpable. Mark froze mid-sip of wine, Emily's phone slipped from her fingers, and even his mother's smile faltered. I didn't expect to see you, Mark said, trying to hide his unease. I let a small, almost imperceptible smile touch my lips. I thought it was time to settle some things, I replied softly, letting the words hang like a shadow. Daniel, standing quietly in the background, had become my anchor. Beside him, I had allies who knew the truth, ready to support me as I dismantled everything they thought they controlled. The room was charged with silent tension. They were waiting for the confrontation, but the real danger was invisible. The documents I carried, the secrets I unearthed, the quiet patience I had cultivated, all of it made me untouchable. For the first time in decades, I wasn't just a mother, a wife, or a victim. I was a strategist. And the Donovans, confident in their control, had no idea that the real game had just begun. I didn't rush. Revenge isn't about speed, it's about precision. Every step was calculated, every move deliberate. I had spent months gathering proof, crafting the perfect sequence that would make the Donovan empire unravel from within. It started quietly. A misplaced document here, a carefully timed leak of financial records there. Auditors arrived like storm clouds no one saw coming. Small errors multiplied into glaring discrepancies, and whispers of scandal began to spread. Mark's pride, his arrogance, couldn't withstand it. Every confident smirk dissolved under the weight of suspicion. Then came the recordings. Conversations he thought were private surfaced, subtly circulated to just the right people. The Donovans scrambled, their perfectly curated image cracking in real time. Emily, who had once seen me as unstable, started noticing the inconsistencies. The lies she'd been fed for years were starting to fall apart before her eyes. I watched silently, a calm observer of the chaos I had orchestrated. It wasn't cruelty. It was justice. Every humiliation, every betrayal, every stolen dollar had a consequence now. And Emily? She finally confronted the truth in glimpses. Her face shifted from disbelief to horror as she pieced together the story. She had been used, manipulated, bribed, and deceived, but she hadn't fully understood until she saw the empire her father and grandparents had built on lies crumbling. By the time they realized I had returned not just to fight, but to dismantle, it was too late. The Donovans' power, their dominance, their control, everything they thought untouchable, was falling apart. And, in the quiet of my victory, I felt something I hadn't in decades. Peace. Because truth, finally, had won. Emily finally approached me the day I decided the game was over. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mix of fear, guilt, and something I had longed for: remorse. She tried to speak, her voice trembling. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know." I held up a hand, cutting her off. Her apology was not the gift she thought it was. "I know, Emily," I said softly, watching the realization wash over her face. "I know everything now. The bribe, the lies, the manipulation. The empire you thought you were defending was built on betrayal." Tears welled in her eyes. "I was wrong. You didn't understand," I interrupted, but my voice was calm, not angry, and that's exactly why I'm not coming back. This isn't about revenge anymore. Not really. This is about freedom. For me. For you, if you're brave enough to face the truth. Mark's face contorted in disbelief as he realized his control had crumbled. His parents looked on, powerless, the empire they had built slipping like sand through their fingers. I stepped away from them, from the life I had known, from the pain and the betrayal. The past 26 years, the heartbreak, the humiliation, they were mine to own, not theirs to control. As I walked into the sunlight, suitcase long gone, I felt it. A weight lifted, a clarity sharpened, a life reclaimed. The Donovan dynasty would collapse from within. Emily would confront her own choices. Mark would face ruin. And I was finally free. Because I had learned what so many forget. You don't need revenge to survive. You need freedom to thrive.